The emperor scarcely ever drank anything but Chambertin, mixed with a great deal of water. He had no cellar of wine, either at the Tuileries or in any of the palaces. The supply was contracted for by wine merchants named Suppé and Perugas, carrying on business at number 338 Rue Saint-Honoré. What it took to furnish the required quantities, not only at Paris and in the imperial chateaus, but also on campaign. One of them, for that purpose, always accompanied headquarters. They delivered the wines and liquors in bottles of a uniform shape, manufactured at Sèvres and marked with the crown N. They were only paid for the bottles consumed. The Chambertin of 5 or 6 years old, which the emperor drank, cost, like the Romanée, Clos Vieillot, Montrachet of the same date, and the Lafite of 10 or 12 years, 6 francs a bottle. The emperor was so accustomed to Chambertin that he had great trouble at St. Helena to habituate himself to claret, so that it was one of the petty sufferings of his captivity. From the time of the Egyptian campaign, it was the wine which he drank solely, as he himself testifies, when after the victory of Elchingen, he went on to sleep at Oberfallheim, where he found that all his baggage was pillaged. Even to his Chambertin, he remarked gaily that up to that time he had not been deprived of it, even in the midst of the sands of Egypt. After all, this indulgence is the only one he was known to have, and it was kept within limits, for he never exceeded the half bottle. No other wine was served at déjeuner, and no liquor after déjeuner. There appeared on the emperor's table a service of silver plate, chased and decorated with the imperial arms. Some of the silver, however, dating from the consulate, was marked with a B. With the exception of the dish covers, generally surmounted with an eagle, the silver in common use was very plain and kept to the ordinary patterns of salt cellars, for instance, wort shells or swans, or ornamented with caduceus. The oil crates were in the shape of swans, with the exception of the salt spoons of silver gilt. Everything was of silver. Silver gilt was only used dinner on Sundays and on grand occasions, contrary to the practice of the princesses, who were always served on silver gilt. But there was no lack of plate. From the time of the Egyptian campaign, General Bonaparte had for his own use a service of plate, very light and portable, which afterwards served as a pattern for what was called the hunting service, but he had only a few specimens left, all the general's baggage having been stolen between Frederic and Aix. During the consulate, he was at first compelled to be satisfied with little, and he was only able to supply himself by degrees. The service supplied by B&A in the year 10 did not consist of enough large pieces, and he was obliged at every grand dinner to hire. As to the table service, a set of white and gold porcelain was used, marked with a B in gold, supplied by Séjournon and costing, including cups and saucers with garlands of laurels, carafes, and glasses richly cut, marked with a B. 23,463 francs, 30 centimes. Little by little, it increased out in the year 13, besides the splendid service of silver gilt presented on the occasion of the coronation by the city of Paris. The emperor possessed a service of silver gilt for 24 covers, a new set of silver, all marked with letter B, with 96 dishes for entremets, 96 entree dishes, 32 dishes for roast meats, and the rest in proportion. But for dessert, as yet he only had the forks and spoons and accessories of silver gilt as a centerpiece. It was necessary to borrow from the garde meuble in Apollo driving the 4 horses of the sun, which on occasions was accompanied by various statuettes of Hercules performing labors. In 1806, the silver plate, increased by a series of purchases, reached to the weight of 24,449 hectograms, completed definitely. In 1811, it was reckoned in the palaces of France only at a value of 2,193,301 francs 48 centimes, without counting 843,791 francs 74 centimes in Tuscany, in Rome, and in Holland. Napoleon always took his déjeuner alone, except during the very short time between his second marriage and the confinement of the empress. Josephine never took déjeuner with him, and after the birth of the king of Rome, the emperor resumed his solitary habits, which suited him better, From the birth of his son, the gouvernante of the children of France, Madame de Montesquieu, was ordered to bring the child every day at the time of déjeuner. He took him on his knees, made him taste his bread and water, and put to his lips a little of any gravy or sauce which came to hand. Madame de Montesquieu remonstrated. The emperor burst out laughing. It was for his son, and with his son, that he had his only noisy gaiety, and the infant king laughed with him. The empress was often present, and was amused also with these little seeds.